This is Dr. Tamia Guest with Rejuvenating Chiropractic.
This is Nara Reed with Modified Nutrition Health Coach.
This is Karen Marcel with June Street Barbershop.
This is Tiffany Marcel with Marcel Luxury Realty, and you're listening to Boss Talk Radio.
Finding your brand space in this ever-changing economy can be challenging to new and established businesses. Graphic Line Media can help launch your business's brand potential to unknown places with creative revisioning that relentlessly presses the competition. From graphic design, web, print, apparel, media, and social, we have something designed to grow your business. Don't hesitate. Rule your space. Visit Graphic Line Media at graphiclinemedia.com or join our Facebook page at Graphic Line Media to get special discounts and offers.
Knowledge, integrity, security, service. Get behind the shield.
Good morning again if you're tuning back in. Hey, I owe you guys an apology. I just realized that I had the video titles mixed up. This is what happens when you don't get a full cup of coffee in before you jump in this thing in that late night, early morning season, but my apologies again. So if you tuned into the last video, it was actually supposed to be, and I went in and edited it on YouTube and everything, but that one was actually supposed to be titled 3 Things You Need to Know About Investing. And this is actually the video that we're going to talk about how to build your net worth and everything. So every year about this time, the whole net worth mantra starts to circle and everything. And yesterday, I was tagged in a screenshot of it because people wanted to discuss it. So here's what it was. It was showing the wealth gap in America. And as you can see, it's pretty much 10 times from a black family to a white family. And some people got into the unnecessary discussion about whether or not the numbers were legitimate. Some people got offended talking about, well, I don't know anybody that only has this amount, so forth and so on, and then other people were like, well, we need to focus on the solutions, blah, 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 or whatever. And I was looking at all of this and I'm like, so the first problem is people are offended because they don't understand what it is. People are talking about solutions without talking about the foundations of the know-how. And we really need to address this. So this is what we're going to get into today. Welcome to Boss Talk Radio. So this is going to be a lot of information, and we're going to try to knock it out quick because I got to go to work. So grab your pen, grab your paper or your S notes or whatever it is you do to take notes. Share the video because we're about to go in and give you a lot of information. So if you are going to leave any comments, make sure you give StreamYard permission to use your name so I can properly shout you out. Let me know who you are, where you're from, where you're tuning in from, and we're going to go ahead and get into this thing.
Welcome to Boss Talk Radio, the #1 online business and entrepreneurial talk show. Brought to you by Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services. Here's your host, the Texas tax expert, George Dandridge.
So the wealth gap in America is at almost 10 times. This is a real thing. And we can talk about all of the systemic things that contribute to that, from redlining to access, a lot of which were things of the past. Some of them still exist today, but from where I sit, I see a far greater problem. And that problem is rooted in financial literacy and financial culture. And we have to deal with that if we're going to change this narrative, change this generation, because a lot of what we're doing right now is just good talk. It sounds good. I was watching something last night that I don't typically watch, and it was just like the conversation was annoying the hell out of me because there was no facts to support it. It wasn't even really an intelligent conversation. So we're quick to get into the victimology of things, and it's not to, and here's the thing. Here's what I want y'all to understand. There's a difference between acknowledging something and acknowledging that it exists. There's a difference between that and then on the other end, having the victimology mindset about it. That's two very, very different things. You can acknowledge something exists without just falling victim to it or not being able or acting as though you're not able to do something about it. Case in point, if you're a fat boy like myself, I can acknowledge that, but it doesn't mean I have to just dwell in it. I can change my diet. I can get my fat ass in the gym or whatever, and make some changes or whatever. Well, that's the same thing on the finance side. We have to be willing to make some changes. All it takes is for one generation to get real uncomfortable. And that's I know that's easier said than done, but this is the reality. All it takes is for one generation to get real uncomfortable, and we can change it for the rest of history. So first, let's go ahead and get into the boss term of the week, because we want to talk about this wealth gap thing. So one of the biggest things that came up about the wealth gap was the net worth. And again, let me share that screen of what I was tagged in to illustrate this here. So we were talking about this net worth, and some of the people that got offended I felt like they didn't really understand what net worth was, or is rather. In addition to the investment talk being at an all-time high, we also have the conversation of credit at an all-time high. And unfortunately, a lot of that conversation is not coming with the education behind it. We're talking about credit repair, repair your credit to buy a house, repair your credit to not pay high interest rates on credit cards. And if you have bad credit, before you even bother to repair your credit, you need to change your relationship with money, repair your literacy level on finances before you repair your credit, because otherwise you're only doing something that will put you back in the same place. So let's talk about your net worth. Your net worth is what you own. Y'all always hear me talk about ownership, and here's the reason why. But it's what you own minus what you owe. It's the total value of everything you own, including your house, cars, investments, cash, minus your liabilities or debts. And here's the biggest problem in the wealth gap in America is that Black households, Black families, their debt, their liabilities are hugely disproportionate to their assets and to their income for that matter. And too often we want to deal with all the things that are irrelevant. Well, I won't say irrelevant, but are second or third tier as it relates to how we fix these things. We want to address conversations like increase in minimum wage and how, that's needed to be a livable wage. And if you disagree with that, you're called all kind of, crazy names or said to be regurgitating sound bites from Fox News or whatever. But the reality is this: if you do not master the basic finance principles, an increase in money is not going to fix your situation. Let me say that again for the people in the back. If you do not put in a basic understanding of financial principles, more money will not solve your problems. In fact, it will be a biggie situation where you'll actually understand the more money, more problems scenario. And the reason why is because more money is just going to perpetuate your bad habits. It's going to perpetuate the things that you unknowingly do already. So again, your net worth is what you own. We have to start really focusing on the part about ownership and then minus what you owe. And the thing is that when it comes to what you owe should be on a debt that is leveraged to create income. Any other type of debt is largely ridiculous. Now, most people are going to finance their house. We're gonna have this conversation. It's about to get real uncomfortable. Let me drop the term of the week off the screen. I think y'all get that. And let's get into how you get uncomfortable to change history. So let's start with this. Most of you guys have, for those of you who are homeowners, most of you don't own your home outright. You have a mortgage, right? And you're still closed and sold on this 70s and 80s mantra about your home being your wealth or it being the American dream or what have you. And somebody give me a thumbs up because I don't know if the internet is dragging. I just got a Wi-Fi signal. But so you guys, you buy your home, you're in there 15, 20 years, and you've built quote unquote equity, which is one of the lies that is told or whatever, but you build quote unquote equity. And you guys have these dreams, these goals that you never start to chase, even though you have this buildup of a nest egg there, and you protect it with everything. But in reality, this is not an asset unless you leverage it as such. We can think of two times in recent history that this happened. Right after 9/11 and again in 2009 following the meltdown in 2008, where, a lot of people were left holding the bag. So, and this is what I mean by that. Let's say you bought a house and for the purpose of round numbers, not to insult you ballers with the $1 million houses, but for round numbers and to reach everybody. Let's say you have a house and your house is $100,000. After, 10 years in your home or whatever, you have $40,000 of equity in your home. You want to start that business, but you don't have any other outside capital or whatever. You're going to work, you're paying bills. You don't have any other substantial savings, but you have this equity. You won't take your equity out of your house because you're protecting it. But then the market flips. It goes upside down or whatever. And now that $40,000 of equity turned to you being upside down in your house or whatever. And you just lost that value, and simultaneously credit freezes, lending slows down or whatever, so you can't get other money from other sources anyway, and what you were trying to protect, you just found out wasn't real. And it's imperative to have this conversation because, again, at that point, you don't own that. You don't own it until you secure the bag, until you take that money out of there and put it into some other asset that you then own, that you can leverage income from. So this is how wealthy people move from one thing to the next using the same money. I remember, if any of you are Cash Money Record fans or whatever, the Juvenile first album, Soldier Story, the guy Ziggy Wiggler comes on there and say, I took $5 and flipped it 1,000,000 times. Well, this is what the wealthy people are doing. There's not that they always have this inherent blessing or this windfall of money coming or whatever. It's just that, and for those of you that may have come from a street life or whatever, it's really the same principle. You're flipping it, just over and over and over again. You're pulling the money out, putting into something else and just turning that thing over and creating assets. Your net worth is not about just your cash in the bank. It's not about your balance on your bank account. That's why it's called net worth, not actual worth. So one of the things that has to be done in order to close that wealth gap is that you guys have to be willing to get a little uncomfortable, get out of what you were taught. I was watching my man Brian Juber, Big Brother Jupe, yesterday, and he was talking about how a lot of you will say, well, my parents didn't teach me this, my mom didn't teach me this, or whatever. And here's the thing. Even though that may be true, it's not okay for you to now be aware and absolutely choose not to learn. Because now you're at least familiar, you've heard of something past your ears, and you can take the action, become self-actualized to go look for the information. So here's that next part about wealth. Information is the new currency. You want to increase your net worth right away? Start reading. Start reading. Let me take this off the screen for a second, because I want y'all to see this. But start reading. Information is currency. In fact, it's the most prominent currency out there. You think Bitcoin is valuable? Shit. What you think about the technology that drives Bitcoin? That's where the knowledge is, not in the coin. The money is, as I always say, the money is in the mastery of anything. So you want to increase your net worth, start reading. I challenge you guys all the time to spend this much time a day, no matter what you do. So for those of you that drink coffee, not the bougie people with the machine that, do the coffee in 30 seconds, but for those of you that drink the slow drip coffee like myself, it usually takes about 7 minutes for that thing to brew once you hit the start button to brew a full pot. Here's my challenge to you. While that's brewing, read something financial, whether it's a term, a principle, whatever, just read anything, pick a book and go through just a couple pages in that book. One of the things that you guys get caught in is analysis paralysis, where you intend to do something, but you look at the end of it and it seems so demonstrative, so incapable of being overcome that you never get started, and that's like going in a restaurant and looking at one of those, what they call them, those big old hatchet looking steaks. I forget the name of them, you know, but it's like looking at one of those and trying to see yourself at the end of it, you know, with it just bone on it and the potato gone and everything. Nah, you're going to have to take that thing a little bit at a time, you know, otherwise your heart going to stop. So that's part two. But now I was talking earlier in the tax tips video, which I had mistitled, and I apologize for that one again. So I did retitle those. I don't know if the edits stick or whatever the case may be, but I did do those, and I apologize for those of you that jumped on to get this and got that, but you needed that too. So we were talking about how the conversations about investing has become a norm. And I'm telling you, I'm here for it. I love the normalization of conversations about money, because in our community, that thing was so taboo for so long that, you know, people that did understand a few things didn't teach it. You know, it was like rude to talk about money. It was crass, you know, but that's stupid, because if you were to sit with any other cultures, especially around a meal, a dinner table, whatever, that's a normal conversation. Goals, objectives, monetary moves, that's a normal conversation. It's only us where that thing is taboo, or we want to hide, you know, what we're doing because we don't want this person or that person to know our next move because they're going to hate on us. Think about that. That shit sounds stupid. You know, we got to get past that. So, before you start investing in stuff, be it property, this and that and the other, understand what you're doing, get a little bit of knowledge. But I'm not saying become a finance professor before you put some money in the game, you know, but what I am saying is understand enough bare essentials that you qualify to play the game. You know, for those of you that are in the sports areas, you know, maybe in life you had to do tryouts or qualify for a race or something before you can actually run the race. This is the same kind of principle. You want to understand a few things about that. One of the things you want to understand is your tax obligations in investment transactions, because that has to be part of your plan of when to get in, when to get out, and how to move, because you need to factor in that capital gains differential. You know, some of the other things that you just have to understand is, number one, let's take it from the basics. So what I find is that most of you lack discipline. We're just gonna punch you in the mouth with it this morning. You know, most of you lack discipline. And what I mean by lack discipline is your ability to save money is damn near non-existent outside of some other controlling force. Like some of you have a 401k and you think you're doing something, and cool that you have one, congratulations or whatever. But if you can't save money outside of somebody taking it from you before it gets to you, that's saying that you have an inability or unwillingness to manage your own money. You need somebody to do that for you or what have you. And it's really the same thing. Like, so if you have 401k, here's what's cool about that. You absolutely have seen and learned that you can live off of less than you earn, because no matter how much you contribute to your 401k, you manage your household with what you take home. So, same principle. Just pretend you took home less. Reallocate that money to something in savings. So here's some of the things you need to have set aside before you really go deep down this rabbit hole. Number one is an emergency fund. I like how that came together. It's a little rhyme thing. I ain't mean to do that. But number one is an emergency fund. If you do not have an emergency fund, understand this principle. And I want you to think hard about this one, because I challenge you to prove me wrong on this. It's not a problem until it exceeds your budget. Now, no matter where you come from in life, no matter what socioeconomic level or whatever you come from in life, this is a matter of fact, because some problems other people have, you find trivial, while some problems you may have, somebody else may find trivial. And the reason being is because at the point it becomes a problem is only relative to whether or not it exceeded your budget. And by budget, I don't mean that a budget you set aside for something. I mean, it exceeds your resources. You know, if you don't have the cash savings or the ability to put something on a credit card at the time that it becomes a critical need, that's when it becomes a problem. You know, up until then, it's an idea. So the first part, number one, is an emergency fund. Now, first question I always get with this when we're talking about the Elite 8 steps is, well, how much should I have set aside for an emergency fund? Well, this is not a simple answer because, you know, some of the Ramses and sorts will tell you 3 months, 6 months, a year or whatever. And in my mind, that means that's money sitting in one place that can't work for you in another place. So I don't agree with that, because I think it has to be a dual strategy that's happening. While you're saving some money and setting it aside for an emergency, you're putting other money to work for you to decrease the chances of those things becoming an emergency. Okay, so that's number one, having an emergency fund. Number two, this part goes beyond me all the time. I just do not understand it, especially in our culture, because we do the exact opposite. So if you're working to build assets and generate wealth through assets, why wouldn't you spend a few more dollars to protect that thing? George, what the hell are you talking about? I'm talking about insurance. Insurance? Really? Yes, insurance. You have it on your cell phone. You have it on your car, probably because it's the law, some of you anyway. But why don't you have it on the things that you accumulate that is of value, especially when they can't be replaced, whether they're, you know, family heirlooms or, you know, metals or anything like that? Why wouldn't you insure those things? Because insurance is the protection of wealth. See, first you have to accumulate wealth, but then you have to protect it, because anything outside of your control can wipe that thing out. You know, why would you put yourself in that position? Why would you do that to your family? And no, I'm not just talking about life insurance, but that's a whole nother conversation. Y'all know I'm here for that conversation anytime you want to have it or whatever. But matter of fact, perfect segue, because that's the next part of the wealth gap. So let's talk about this part right here. They say that the wealth gap is 10 times over between Black families and white families, right? Let me ask you this question, you know, because here's the conversations that I don't like or that I think don't have value. They just sound like good talk. Hey, Sharita, good morning. This just sounds like good talk. One of them is reparations. Sounds good. There's not a solid plan nowhere on planet Earth about how to distribute it, even if there were to agree to it. But do you really think that this 10 times over wealth, which, by the way, is a smaller number than it was just 6 or 7 years ago, do you really believe that that number is completely the product of hundreds of years of free labor through slavery? Is that what you believe? Do you really believe that it's completely attributed to home ownership and that this just means that not enough Black families own homes? Is that what you believe? Do you believe that it is primarily because of access to education that created higher paying jobs for generations in the past, and that's the difference between this? If you believe any of those things, here's the thing. No one of those things is an attribution alone. They work collectively to, or aggregately, to get to this, but there's something else. And this is the part where somebody can do something about it. So here's what it is. This is, I don't know, roughly 155,000 or something, 57,000, something like that, dollars apart or whatever. And in the title, I told you guys, you can close this gap in 40 years. And somebody's probably saying, well, how? Here's a unique dynamic that most cultures, except for white and black, but most other cultures, plan for and accept into their economic diaspora that we don't. We do it very, very reactively. We do a lot of things reactively when it comes to finances, which is why we can't get ahead of the ball, you know. And shout out to the many people I see online that's really pushing this information to you guys, that's really trying to help you, you know, but you guys can't take shortcuts. There's too much quality information out there. There's too many of us giving it to you for free and you don't value it. You know, shouts out to Big Brother Juice, Rita Humphrey, Jay Veal, Evan Jefferson, Dr. O, Dave Anderson, Derek Harper. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many people out here giving you this information. You have to choose to receive and accept and apply. It's 3 action steps: receive, accept, and apply the information that's being given to you in a very practical way. And then understand this. I don't know if you're familiar with annuities, and I'm not pushing annuities, by the way. I'm using an example involved in annuities to explain this other concept. So annuities have this period called the accumulation period. And this is where you put money in to hit a target before it's annuitized and distributed out to you. So in life, there has to be this thing with your wealth called the accumulation period. And in theory, it would help you, or in theory, it would range throughout your working years, which in theory is 18, from 18, 22, whenever you theoretically get started, up to, you know, 62 to 70 based on when you retire. You don't have to fall into that mantra, number one. Number two, you don't, you can't go by that period reacting without a plan. You know, a lot of us start to get conscious about things around 40, and then we have good intentions till we're 50. And then at 55, we have this act of desperation about how to do something. But this other part of the plan that I'm talking about is that a lot of you are finding that you have a parent that's ailing and a kid that's going to college. You're at the peak of your earnings, and whatever plan you thought you had, the funding isn't there as much because earlier on you didn't plan for that kid's college, and that parent didn't plan for their care, and now you're caring for them both. Well, George, how do I escape that? I'm going to help you with that. This is the other value of life insurance besides putting you in the ground. Have a life insurance on that parent. If their health is to the point that you're taking care of them, they're living with you, you're using their Social Security for home aids, et cetera, have a life insurance policy on them. It's not a crime. It's not a shame. It's a necessity. It's respect. Have a policy on them for as much as you can afford. And the key word there is afford. Matter of fact, we're going to make affordability next week's term of the week, because a lot of you confuse the ability to purchase with the ability to afford. So have what you can afford. There are days left here, not going to be long. So, and that's just a reality. and have a plan for the distribution of that policy, that wealth, when that time should come. Have a policy on yourself for that child. But we live in a strange day. Have a policy on that child as well. Let's put this in perspective. We said this was $150,000 gap or whatever, and I want you to understand that having a $150,000 policy does not close this, because you may have some debt or whatever as it relates to that as well. So let's assume you have an outstanding mortgage of $150,000 or whatever, but you have this policy on this family member that's $200,000. This allows for the over-glorified funeral services that we tend to have, while then also paying your house off. At the point that your house is paid off, and this is your biggest debt or whatever, what was allocated to pay for that has now been freed up and can be invested in something else. So what's the thing to do there? Do you take that money and start to live great, go out and buy the Bentley or whatever the case may be? No, that's not what you do. You know, you take that money and that's the money that you want to start to maybe put in the market or other assets. This is the time you talk to a financial planner or whatever. You should have talked to an estate planner prior to that death, but most of you don't think to do that. Some of you don't even know to do that, and that's okay. It's called an estate planner, and no, an estate planner is not for people who are just billionaires or whatever. It's for anybody that has anything that they want to pass down, pass on, or control beyond the grave. Did you know that, like, I've heard some of the stupid excuses about, well, I'm not going to have this size life insurance because I don't want my significant other, balling out of control off of my death or benefiting from my death in that way, or my kids, are going to run around and do this. I don't want it that big because I need to protect them. Did you know you can control allocation of a policy and its funds from beyond the grave? It's just something you have to do when you're alive. This is what I mean when I'm saying you have to be proactive, not reactive. You have to intentionally set that thing in place, so the other part of that is you can pay the house off for the purpose of, increasing credit, this and that and the other, and then pull some of that same money back out and go get another house that you use as an income property, not trying to keep up with the gram saying, oh, I have a house over here and a house over there or whatever, but one that actually generates income, because at that point you can go and cash out on another house and just finance the repairs or whatever. But this it's all methods. And when I want to tell you guys, when I see the accumulation process, is that there's not a shortcut to this. It's not like weight loss where you could go get a tummy tuck or liposuction or a gastric sleeve or whatever. Wealth doesn't work that way. It's like going to the gym. It's going to take you some time, but the results are more permanent than when you have those shortcut surgery processes to get from here to there and it don't stick or whatever, because those things might generate cash, but it doesn't generate wealth. You guys have to understand the differences between cash and wealth. Again, wealth is in the assets, not in the monetary part. Like there's this craze right now. Everybody's talking about, oh, well, if you had bought Bitcoin 5 years ago, you could close the wealth gap. Well, no, because first and foremost, you'd have had to have enough money to put in it 5 years ago. And let's be clear, 5 years ago, it wasn't exactly cheap. It was a whole lot cheaper, but it wasn't cheap. It was manageable for most of you, because there was a time where one Bitcoin was the same price as an iPhone. I want y'all to think about that, for all of y'all that's walking around with these expensive phones, myself included. But there was a time where one Bitcoin was the price of a new iPhone. And I remember myself personally doing the double dutch, like waiting to get in, waiting for the rope to turn, because I seen it go from like 1,100 to 2,500. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna wait till it come back down. and it didn't come back down. It went up to 3,600. And I'm like, all right, well, when it come back down to 2,500, I'm gonna go ahead and get in. Next thing I know, it was at a little over $4,000. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm gonna go on jump in this situation or whatever. You know, I wrote it to it got to, I want to say 16 or 17 or something like that. And when it dropped down to 13, I jumped off like a never mind. Let's just say I got out. I left a little bit of something in there, and then I started putting back in around 12 or whatever. But the moral of the story is it's an accumulation, and then there's a triggering transaction for you to pull the coinage, pull the cash or whatever out, because it just sitting there is just as useless as money in a saving account. Some people say, well, yeah, it's growing. But let's not pretend we didn't have that day where everybody was speculating Bitcoin to hit 20 and the bottom fell out and all of a sudden it was worth 6. Like, come on, it happened, and it can happen. You have to mitigate what you put in the market because it's actually a risk. But some of you have to improve your relationship with money. Again, I can't say that enough. You have to improve your relationship with money. Read books like Profit First. Understand how you can set you aside first and foremost. But then when I say your relationship with money, we have this stigmatism that we do. We have this thing that we try to impress the next person with what we were able to achieve from a material standpoint. And then there's some of us that are not doing that, but we enjoy luxury things or material items, and then they're criticized even though they've done the work to earn the right to be able to get these things because they can afford them. They're not just buying them, they're able to afford them. It's one of the biggest lessons I teach my kids, the ability to count versus the ability to own. There's a cost of ownership after the purchase. So you have to change your relationship with money. So we talked about the emergency fund. We talked about insuring your assets, especially your life, which is a critical part to that. And then the next part is the investing. So let's be clear. There's a war that goes on every day on social media between business owners and employees. And where that battle gets really, really crazy is with the barely making it business owners and the high income employees talking at each other. And what they're missing is it doesn't matter if you work for yourself or you work for someone else. If you don't put your money to work for you, the rest really don't matter. You cannot out-earn time by putting in time. The only way to out-earn time is to invest money in it. Let me give this to you a different way. There's this other war going on social media, the battle of to increase or not to increase minimum wage. And here's why that's the most stupid ass argument. And here's why it's a stupid argument. Do you not realize that the biggest purveyors of minimum wage are the largest investors in automation? So by the time you cross that threshold to get to a quote unquote minimum wage, there won't be many minimum wage jobs out there anyway. I implore you to get a skill. I implore you to learn some things that will allow you to make a shift, and in doing that, you can put money into work for you. This is the greatest secrets of wealth, whether you want to talk about real estate, stocks, cryptocurrency, having your own business. At the end of the day, it's one principle: having your money work for you, having your money earn money, because you can only physically do so much or be so many places at one time, no matter how great you are. I know you a bad some of them watch your mouth, but at the end of the day, there's a cap on your energy level. There's a cap. And if you're always putting it into the quote unquote grind, some people attacked me a couple of weeks ago talking about the struggle life, but on the flip side of that, I don't know a whole lot of people that grinded harder than me, but I had to learn the hard way that there's something besides the grind. I can get money to come in and grind with me, and in a lot of cases for me. That frees up more time to do more things. Hey, Renee. Renee says you must form a relationship with your money and not misuse it. You abuse it, just like any other relationship, it'll leave you. Lord have mercy. Let somebody say amen. She preached that word. It will leave you. I believe the saying is, a fool and their money shall soon part. Look, if you don't have a plan for your money will have a plan for you. And the biggest thing that we deal with in dealing with that wealth gap is we don't believe in delayed gratification. We want everything right now, just as soon as we could get it. That's why, look, where do you think the concept of check the check came from? And I don't care how much you earn, because I have clients well into six-figure earners that literally live check to check. Why? Because they're living above their means. They're living at the top of their income. And the reality is no matter how much money you make, if you can live within your means, you may not like it, but you can do it, And this conversation, when I talk about this is taboo and it's crazy, and we really have to normalize this conversation. I'm talking about even to the extent of the gender wars, and I'm not talking about, homosexual or not. I'm talking about the relationships, intimate relationships that struggle, if you want to call it a power struggle or whatever you want to call it, go down your news feed right now. You can scroll for 30 seconds without finding why do women or why do men or broke men this or women that make this shit, like all of this stuff, right? And it's basically like women proclaiming like, hey, I can do it by myself, but I shouldn't have to or want to. Where's the men from yesterday or whatever? And, men on the flip side saying, well, hey, well, you take sex out of the equation and what do you bring? At the end of the day, all of it is a bunch of BS, because here's the reality. That situation you're talking about with men from a few decades ago means that wife, that grandmother was willing to do something you're not willing to do. And that's that she was willing to live/exist off of his income. And it be enough. And in some cases, many of you may even knew grandma that worked or whatever, but he was terrible with money. So he stopped at the track on the way home or whatever the case may be, or had multiple families across town. And that's why you saw both of them working, but couldn't get a whole lot further. But here's the reality. Things were a whole lot cheaper then. Most of you today, I challenge you, because it's that time of the year, if you are married, filing joint, or if you're single, y'all want to have some real relationship conversations. It's cool to date and go out and have fun and everything. That's what you should be doing early on. But the first time you want to discuss getting serious, let's look at some tax returns and credit reports. Those two things, because those two tax returns are going to tell you what that adjusted gross income is. And then you can have a conversation about how you plan to strategize the collective incomes to build assets, eliminate debt, etc. Same with the credit thing, how you're going to leverage this or whatever. And so they talk about, well, men shouldn't date if they're broke. A lot of people have material assets and they're broken and broke, because their credit is not leveraged. Their credit is maxed out in non-income producing assets. So you're judging the guy that's over here in the hoopty while I don't think they still say jocking, but that was I told my age, but you're jocking the guy over here with the 600, but the flip side of it is, between his car note, insurance, and mortgage, he's pretty much maxed out on his income, and his enjoyment is coming on his credit card, like going out on dates and everything, coming on his credit card, and he's paying the bare minimum. You know what I'm saying? And then you get yourself locked up in a relationship to find out that he's maxed out in debt. Didn't matter that he made 75 grand a year. He was living at, the rate of 100. So these are the real conversations about money that we need to normalize. So when I say sacrifice, getting uncomfortable for the next generation, it's really just that. It's really a sacrifice because, in my opinion, especially over the last, I'd say 15 years, earning is less of a problem than bad spending. We talk about this wealth gap stat, but what about the $1.3 trillion that we spend annually? Where the hell are we spending it at? Which brings me to my last topic, and I'm going to let y'all go because I ain't mean to hold y'all this long, but clearly y'all see I get excited about this thing. Brings me to my last topic. We have to get rid of the hypocrisy. And this part is, matter of fact, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. I'm not going to even do a separate episode on this. I'm going to just go ahead and hit you with... Yeah, we're going to get right into that part because this is the part I'm going to let y'all go after this. But I have to address this because it's not just a Black thing, it's an American thing, but it expounds in Black culture. And that's this hypocrisy in America. This is how stupid we sound. We want the lowest price but the highest income. How the hell does that go together? You can't have it made in the USA if you don't want to pay. It don't work that way. It's a mathematical improbability. You can't have the cheapest product with the highest wages. So which one are you willing to concede to? Are you willing to pay more or make less? I don't know. Now let's take this into the Black culture, and we're talking about this wealth gap thing. We're going to expand on that. This is how stupid we sound. We want to cop the Louis Gucci thing to look wealthy, to look like we've made it, to look like we have this money. So we go buy all of this name brand stuff. You don't know these people. Meanwhile, there's someone in your neighborhood providing a good or a service or whatever, and you won't support their business because, one, you scared one day they might do better than you. Two, for those of you that do go in and support, you're asking for discounts and hookups and things of this nature. How are we going to, come on. This should be the first person you pay. Well, second person you pay. First person you pay needs to be yourself. You need to pay yourself well. But these are the people in your everyday community. And for those of you that don't live in quote unquote Black communities, it doesn't matter. When you're in your community, whatever your community is, you need to spend in your community because that money is going to circulate, But then beyond that, shout out to my man, Amir Young, the original Black-owned business group on social media with over 50,000 members. He has this new campaign that says buying Black is a lifestyle. And I want you guys to consider that for a minute. Do you happen to buy Black when it happens? Or do you make a conscious effort to seek out and support. Like, one of the reasons most of us get into restaurants or whatever is because the most common thing that we associate with each other when we're celebrating this, that, and the other, we want to break bread. But how many of you are spending money with these Black service providers, from landscapers and HVACs to computer programmers, financial literacy people? I don't have specific details, but my girl Sharita has a new finance product coming out that she just recently got copyrighted or whatever. But you guys will go spend a couple grand with the Dave Ramsey thing, and she's shown you, hey, I got it out the mud. I come from where you come from. I've been where you've been, and this is what I was able to achieve. And I didn't build that off of the backs of you just talking about it, because Dave Ramsey's greatest secret is his marketing ability, because he ain't talking about shit. Let me tell you, I done listened to the guy a couple times, and I could poke holes all in his programs. But hey, it is what it is. You guys have to start to support each other. Stop asking for the discounts, the hookups, and this and that and the other, and really get into, the consumption of Black goods and services when necessary. Now, here's the other side of that. I'm not saying be silly, because there is a reality that, let's say it's a grocery store. You may not be able to shop at this Black-owned grocery store to the same extent because Walmart has it so much cheaper. Well, Walmart's cheaper because of buying power. He can't buy it the way they can buy it. But if you go there and get anything, maybe it's something that Walmart does not have, or maybe they were a little bit closer than Walmart at a time or two, and you're able to drop in here and there and get something. It goes a lot further, because unlike the Waltons kids, their kids are going to be in school with your kids. Their kids are the ones that are going to be on the cheerleaders and the football teams and the booster stuff or whatever. So that money is coming right back, and it all works cohesively. I think the Lion King called it the circle of life. This is the same. This is the circle of wealth and how it's built. So this needs to be your next investment. Besides making money work for you, be conscious where you put your money. Stop allowing yourself and your money to be disrespected by brands and institutions that don't value you and slap you in the face with your own money. How many times we have to see these videos where somebody was overcharged or thrown out or treated wrong or whatever in these different institutions? And there's the last thing. Can we please stop? Just stop begging to be a part of something where you're not wanted. We have we had civil rights movement 50 something years ago, and today we're still kissing ass about participating in this or participating in that or getting this award or that award. Why are the awards validating you? What does that mean to you? Why do you need to be a part of it? Be a part of your own. Shout out to the legendary Don Cornelius, who really kind of understood that concept or whatever and created stuff like the Soul Train Awards, and you don't have to agree with the politics of it or their selection process or whatever. It's just the concept that, hey, this is somebody that took control and took ownership, of that thing. So this is where ownership comes back in. But in order to have the ownership, you need to have the support. And you can't get mad at any business owner that seeks support outside of our own, because if you guys won't support, guess what? There's some people that will. And, we're so good to you, we get the money and we bring it back and circulate it with us. This has been your host, George Dandridge. This last segment was 5 Minutes of Fire. I hope y'all got something from this. I hope that you share the video. I hope that it will change your paradigm about your relationship with money and cause you to be self-actualized about closing the wealth gap, not necessarily collective, but just for your family, that you take something away. I think I froze up. That's my cue that it's time to go. I'll see you guys on Friday.